Okay, folks, just playing around, tidying up the wiring and buttoning down everything before I screw the shell back on, more permanent like. But what I wanted to do here, as you can see, it's not attached to the locomotive. I was a little tired of having to hook the tender up to the locomotive every time I wanted to test it. So I wanted its own power supply, and it didn't have a center rail pickup, and it didn't have a good ground. So what I've done, as you can hear, the battery backup allows that shutdown sequence. That's pretty cool. But I thought you might want to see, this is the Dali reversing board, and this is the sound system here. Battery backup, our speakers under our paint cap there, and I've hot glued the wires down on top of that baffle. Soldered a ground wire to the chassis there, and then what I've also done is added a pickup roller to the bottom of one of the trucks, brought a hot wire up and tied it into the forward side of the tether, meaning that way, the locomotive side I should say. So that center rail pickup will feed the locomotive, increasing its electrical footprint as it's rolling down the track. And then it also helps feed our soundboard and our reversing board here. So that's all hot wired, as they say. So I was happy with that project, and I lost out on the one remaining Williams pickup roller that I found on eBay. Somebody else got that one. So I used a Lionel. I believe this is the 500-100 pickup roller right here. And I added it to this piece of PVC. This is just some trim, PVC trim that I had used on a previous project, and I used a 256 by 3/4 inch truss head screw again for clearance purposes. It's low enough that the axle doesn't hit that screw. And then if you can see down there where the wire is from the pickup, there's a white pad there, and that's just, I added that real thin. It's just glued onto the truck frame, but I added that just to keep the center roller from hitting the chassis and shorten out. So that worked out quite well. And okay, so if you see right here, it's at the right height, and gives us enough pressure on that center rail. So that part's all finished, and I'll show you how I made it. I've got some still pictures here I'll try to narrate, but then that gave us our independent power source for working on this tender. And we don't need the locomotive to work on it, see? Pretty cool. Made my life easier. But what I also did on the tender here, because once again all they had was a hole in the tender shell. So to work on anything, you had to keep unsoldering everything that went to any board here to work on the tether. So what I did is I routed out that hole, so now that whole tether fits right through there, and I don't have to worry about disconnecting any wires. So that worked out well. I wanted to show you, now that the tender shell's back on, that from the outside you can't see that slot where that tether comes through. You've got the foot plate here, and then you got the chassis of the tender, so that's all hidden under there, so you won't be able to see that. Okay, and then once the shell of the locomotive is back on, the slot that I routed out between the two screws there, so that just slips down over the wires now, instead of having to deal with pulling them through the hole after unsoldering. Now we don't have to disconnect anything in the locomotive to get the shell up. Alright, so I just wanted to show those two things. So now I can put this all together and get our load back in, and we'll go on from here. But I'll put some still pictures up just to show you how I did this, but it's a pretty simple process. I wish I could have got that Williams roller, but I lost out on the bid in the last second, so you'll have that with eBay. Alright, let's get to these still pictures. So to begin the project, I took this 5/8 square PVC blind stop, they call it. Comes in 8-foot lengths, and this is a piece I had left over from a window project I was working on the first floor. But it makes good project material. So in this picture, I've removed the truck from the chassis there, and we've got our pickup roller and our plastic bag over there to the left of the chassis. So this is how it all starts. Then you got to do measurements, lots of measurements. Here I've taken the pickup roller and traced around it on the blind stop there, and then I use my scalpel there to notch out and dig down into the PVC, but just the same thickness as the mounting tab on the pickup roller. I want it to set down in and be captured by that PVC, and that prevents the roller from twisting as it's going around the track, around the curves. There's quite a bit of forces acting on that. You just don't want to depend on the screw to hold it in place. So that's why I've gone to the trouble of notching out the PVC here. So in these next couple of pictures here, I'm showing I've test fitting the roller into the PVC in that notch. Make sure it's fitting okay. And then the next picture I'll show the roller on its side, and you can see how now the thickness of that tab on the roller is now inset into the PVC, and that'll just keep it from twisting, like I said. So in this picture I'm showing I've mounted it to the truck frame there, and I might have mentioned earlier I used the 256 screw truss head, but that's not what I used. I used a 356 by 1/2 inch low profile stainless machine screw in there. The hole was already in the truck frame, so that made my life easier. But the thickness of the PVC I cut down to just under 1/4 of an inch, and that gave me the correct height for the roller to hit the rails with a little bit of pressure, and so that worked out well. Just left it long there until I was satisfied that everything was going to fit properly. And then once I'm done, I'll go ahead and paint this piece of PVC black, but for now, it's fine. So here's all our parts and pieces, the roller, the PVC notched out for it, the hole drilled through, the machine screw. That's a 356, like I said, by a ½ inch. And I used the low profile head to allow clearance for the axle on that wheel set that'll sit below that. Enough clearance to roll without hitting. Okay. And in this picture, I'm just double checking the height, making sure the roller, once it's depressed, will match the tread on the wheel set. All right. Here I've taken a real thin piece of PVC and glued it to the underside of the truck frame, and I did that to prevent the soldering lug on the roller from touching the truck frame there and shorten anything out. And when it gets depressed, it gets a little close to the truck frame, and I didn't want any shorting. So this is my solution. So here's our final product. The roller's mounted to the truck now, and I'll paint the PVC at a later date, like I said. And the wire's soldered to the lug on the roller. Wheel sets are back in, truck's mounted, works perfect. The wire goes up through one of the old speaker holes, so that worked out nicely. Enough slack to allow the truck to swivel back and forth as it goes around the curves. So I wanted to share this with you, maybe give you some ideas of, maybe you have a unique situation where you need to add a roller. So, all right, that's it for this one. Toodles.